Beltane is often described as a holiday of fire, fertility, and passion. But underneath its surface, Beltane asks us a deeper question. It asks us, what are we willing to bring into expression right now? What are we willing to bless, protect, and to bring into fuller and deeper and richer experience in our own lives? So, we're going to be exploring tonight the lore and the magic of Beltane, including what Beltane is, why fire is such an important part of this holiday, as well as simple ways you can celebrate Beltane in your own practice. So merry meet. I'm Aislin. This is Ask Aislin. Tonight I'm here with a witch's guide to Beltane. Welcome to those who are joining us live. Say hi in the chat and let us know you're here. As always, we will have a Q&A at the end of this episode. You can leave questions and comments in the chat. I'll answer everything at the end. And we're going to dive right in. Leave a heart or a thumbs up somewhere in the feed, and this will just help us get this recording out to more people. So we have a lot to talk about tonight. We're going to start by talking about what is Beltane, where does it come from, and then we'll get into some themes of Beltane, ways that you can actually experience the magic of Beltane in your own life. We're actually going to have some simple practices you can do, as well as a spell that would be very much aligned for the Beltane season. So let us dive in. Let's start by talking about what is Beltane. So Beltane is one of the 8 sabbats in the Wheel of the Year. In the Northern Hemisphere, it is celebrated usually on May 1st, but in some traditions, it can be celebrated from the evening or the sundown of April 30th to the sundown of May 1st. Beltane is considered the midpoint between the spring equinox and the summer solstice. And because those two dates change year to year, technically astrological Beltane also changes year to year. In 2026, the actual astrological Beltane will take place from 5/4 to 5/5, depending on which time zone you are in. But what I will talk about at the end as well is it's not so important about what date we're celebrating. It's more about a celebration of the themes and the essence of Beltane, and also remembering that Beltane is a season like all sabbats. It lasts for about 5 to 6 weeks before we transition into the next sabbat. So you have plenty of time to work with this energy to celebrate the sabbat. You don't have to worry about celebrating or observing it on any one particular day. Though, if you do want to celebrate on the traditional day, that would generally be May 1st. Now, Beltane sits opposite the Wheel of the Year from Samhain. Samhain marks our descent into darkness, our descent into the darker half of the year. For the Celts, in the ancient Celtic calendar, that Samhain would mark the beginning of winter. Now, Beltane, on the other hand, marks movement into the lighter, the warmer part of the year, the more fertile half of the Wheel of the Year. For the ancient Celts, Beltane would be considered the beginning of summer. Now, as we're going to talk a little bit later when we discuss the veils, Beltane and Samhain, although very polar opposites on opposite sides of the wheel, also share something in common, and that is the thinness of the veils, though the thinning of the veils is done for different reasons. So we'll discuss that in a little bit. But one of the things to think about with Beltane is thinking about its place in the wheel. So before Beltane is Ostara. Ostara is the beginning of spring for the modern calendar. Ostara asks us what is beginning to grow in our lives. You know, what are the seeds that we're planting? What is beginning to grow? On the other hand, Beltane takes it a step further. It asks us what is alive, what is already blooming, and what is asking for us to tend to it, protect it, or bless it, or celebrate it as we bring it further into fuller expression. Now, the main themes of Beltane include fire and fertility and passion, which are usually the main things that people think about. But other themes that are connected to Beltane are growth, blessing, protection, sensuality, union, and creativity. So it is important for us to remember when we talk about fertility at Beltane, this is not just meaning literal pregnancy and reproduction. Sometimes people are a little uncertain about this Sabbat because they think that that's really what it's connected to. And while that is one aspect of the Sabbat, our fertility can be many, many things. It can be our creative fertility. It could be our spiritual fertility. It could be our artistic fertility. It could be even the fertility that we feel in our own relationships, which just means deepness and growth within them. So there are many, many, many ways that we can think about fertility. So just keep that in mind as you're kind of approaching this Sabbat, and you may begin to experience it in a different way. So I am just going to say hi to those in the chat. And I think that this is feeding live. Okay, now I can see the chat. At first, I couldn't see anybody here. So Merry Meet to Debbie and Jenny and Rebecca. Merry Meet, and to Cersei. Merry Meet to everyone. If you're here, if you're here with us live, say hi in the chat so we know that you are here. And also let us know, how do you celebrate Beltane? Is this your first time celebrating? Are you somebody who has celebrated in the past? If you are newer to celebrating the Wheel of the Year, don't worry, I've got some ideas for you a little bit later in this episode. But we also love to hear from seasoned practitioners and people who have celebrated this holiday before, and you'll likely have ideas that aren't included in my episode, and people can learn from you as well. And Merry Meet to Lisa as well, who is joining us. Merry Meet, everyone. So let us talk about a little bit about the lore and the background before we get into the practices. So, as I mentioned earlier, Beltane, like many of the sabbats, has Celtic roots. Beltane is considered one of four sabbats of four, I should say, four Celtic fire festivals, that includes Samhain, Imbolc, and Lughnasadh. Now, one thing I didn't mention in my notes, but that's why I was pausing for a moment to say, is that the other four sabbats, which are the ones that are connected to the equinoxes and to the solstices, so that would include Ostara and Litha, as well as Mabon and Yule. Those sabbats are generally called the quarters. So you will sometimes hear people refer to Beltane, Samhain, Lughnasadh, and Imbolc as cross-quarter days. And so what it means is those are the days that fall smack in between the quarters. Now, one thing that's sometimes surprising for people, I'm going to try not to go off on too much of a tangent with this, but one thing that's a little surprising sometimes for people to learn is that the 8 sabbats themselves were never celebrated in that order by any group of people on Earth that we know of. It's putting them all together in this formation of the Wheel of the Year is a modern pagan practice to do. That does not mean that people did not celebrate these festivals at some point in time. There just wasn't one group of people who celebrated all of them until in this order until modern times. So now each of these 4 cross-quarter days, or the 4 fire festivals of the Celts, mark an important turning point in the season and an important seasonal transition for the people who celebrated the holidays. So since we're talking about Beltane, we'll spend most of the time kind of discussing what that transition meant. So Beltane marked the start of the summer season. And this can be weird for us in, modern paganism. We're just at the very end of April right now at this time of this recording. May 1st is coming at the end of this week. In many places where our viewers and listeners live, it does not really look like the summertime yet, right? And so that can be kind of a startling realization to hear that there was once a time when Beltane would mark the beginning of the summer season. But the Celts had different seasons. From what I understand, there really were only 2 seasons. It was summer and winter. And so Samhain would begin the winter season and Beltane would begin the summer season. Now, the name Beltane itself, it depends on what etymology we're looking at. There are different translations for the word Beltane. In most translations, it translates to something like bright fire. I've heard one translation say that it means lucky fire, bonfire or bonefire. And then sometimes the fires of Bel, who was a Celtic god of fire, so it makes sense that the holiday itself would be named after him. Now, one of those translations, like I said, bonfire or bonefire, leads us into one of the many themes or things that would be celebrated, especially in ancient times, by those who celebrated Beltane. Historically, fires were always part of this kind of seasonal rite. Cattle would be driven either between the fires or near the fires, and the idea was to bless and protect the cattle before they were sent out to pasture for the summer. So it was a very important rite that would take place. The idea was sympathetic magic, right? If these animals were not protected, then perhaps the herd would not produce as much as they might in other years, and the people of the land depended on what the herd could produce. So we believe that this is where the idea of the Beltane fires comes from, and also where the idea of protection as a theme of Beltane comes from. And sometimes people don't hear that aspect of it. They think of it more as this kind of fertility, sexuality, sensuality holiday. But it's also a time when you can very much tap into the energy of protection if there's something in your life that needs protecting, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, the fires of Beltane, of course, are celebratory. I always think back to the book Mists of Avalon, and in particular the TV miniseries version of the book, if anybody ever saw that. And there's this great scene where the tribe is celebrating Beltane and driving the cattle through the fires. So you see that kind of depicted in many images too of Beltane as these great fire festivals, people dancing around the fires. So these fires are very much an important aspect of the holiday. They can be cleansing, they can be blessing, they can also be warding, as we mentioned, or protecting as well. Now, another kind of aspect of Beltane, besides the fires, is the idea of flowers and kind of nature magic and flower magic. And there is very much an overlap between the Beltane celebrations and then those mundane, kind of in the mundane world, the celebrations of May Day. So both of these holidays or these celebrations include flowers, in particular May flowers. Hawthorn is a very important plant at that time of the wheel. Greenery of any kind, flower crowns, like all of these things too can be brought into a Beltane rite or ritual, and also could be used to decorate a Beltane altar or the space that is being decorated for Beltane. May baskets, which typically were baskets that had bright, multiple different kinds of flowers in them. There could be dancing, and then, of course, there is the maypole. Now, the maypole tends to make its way into both kind of that mundane May Day celebration and also the spiritual Beltane celebration. Now, the maypole is often interpreted in modern paganism to be a symbol of fertility, of union, of weaving together two things, in particular, weaving together the masculine and the feminine energies of the earth. And we'll talk a little bit later when we talk about some of the practices of Beltane. We'll talk a little bit more about the maypole and ribbons in particular and what they mean. But one of the things too, I would just say now is a maypole does not necessarily need to be something connected to fertility. And so we, in past rituals, our coven has actually done maypoles, a full big maypole, or we have made mini maypoles, which you can make in a jar. And it all depends on the intention that you set at that time. Some people want physical fertility at this time of the year. And if you are somebody who is trying to get pregnant, this is a perfect time because the energy is very much aligned. But remember, it's anything that you want to be fertile around in your life, anything that you want to draw into your life, the maypole or any of these symbols could be used to help you draw that thing in. Now, I mentioned earlier, another kind of aspect of Beltane is the thinning of the veils. Now, the thinning of the veils is very different at Beltane than it is at Samhain. At Samhain, we have many souls who are exiting this plane of existence, crossing through the veils into another life. The focus at Samhain is more on our ancestors, it's on death, it's on spirits, the spiritual realm, on endings and the unseen. But at Beltane, that thinning of the veils is associated with something different. It's associated with the fae, the fairy creatures, also nature spirits. There is very much a time of enchantment, of fertility, and the wildness of the living world. And this energy really it extends from now at Beltane all the way into Litha, into summer solstice. So if you think of Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream, for example, it's all about love and fertility and magic and fairies. And so that energy that kind of begins at Beltane carries over into midsummer, into summer solstice as well. Now, there are also spiritual themes of Beltane, and these are things that you can think about when you're trying to think about how will you celebrate in your own life. Like, of course, you can welcome in the fae spirits. One of the things I would mention before I go into the spiritual themes of Beltane too, is that I'm actually, as I was writing this episode, I was actually thinking about talking more about the fairy folk because that is something that's often on people's minds at this time of year. And then it felt like if I did that, then it was just going to spin off into like almost like a second episode. So I think that next week on 5/5, I think I'm going to do an episode talking more about how to work, who the fairy folk are, how to work with them safely, and how to bring them into your life and work with them during this time of the year. So I'll kind of move on from the fairy folk, and just if you are interested in that, check out next week's episode. But let's talk a little bit about the spiritual themes of Beltane. So one of these themes is desire, and I think this is a really important one. Desire does not have to be sexual. Desire is asking us, at Beltane is asking us to identify, what do you feel most drawn to? Sometimes we get in this slump during the winter season. We're in spring, but it sometimes takes a little time to come out of it. We're still a little sleepy and our energy is sluggish. But Beltane can start to wake up that energy. And, so really ask yourself, what is it that you desire? What is it that you want to move toward? What are you feeling drawn toward? What are you feeling pulled toward at this time? Now, not every desire must be acted on. Desire can be something that we have in our minds. It can be something that we hold and file away. Maybe there's many things that you want, but we only have the energy to focus on one or two at this time. But this time of the year asks us, what are the things that you want? Desire can reveal to us where our life force is currently heading or currently moving toward. So when you have a desire for something, like let's say you have a desire for movement or a desire for certain foods or a desire for community or a desire to create something, it's showing you where that energy, where that your personal energy, where it wants to move. And so it's really important for us, even if we're not going to act on those desires in that moment, maybe it's not the right time or the right space in our lives, but it's important for us to file those away so we remember what it is that we're drawn toward, what it is that drives us, right? Desire can also like I said, reveal where your energy is trying to move in that moment. So here's a few questions for you to contemplate and explore here at Beltane around this idea of desire. So what am I longing for? And you can feel free, like just with any kinds of prompts, you can feel free to just sit and contemplate these. Feel free to put them in the chat too if you feel called for, if you have any answers to these. What am I longing for? But you can also, in quiet reflection, you can think about them, you can journal. I like to take a walk or a hike and just contemplate the question while I'm moving. Another question that's really good that revolves around the idea of desire at Beltane is, what feels alive in me right now? So it can, like I mentioned, as we come through that winter time, it could feel like things go dormant. We may be more focused on more internal work as opposed to more external work. But as we move through the spring into Beltane and then eventually into summer, what begins to take root here, what seeds get planted at Ostara, what starts to bloom and grow at Beltane, what starts to really flourish at Litha. This is where it starts, asking ourselves, what is feeling alive in me right now? What have I been dismissing as being impractical, silly, or not important? So sometimes we take our desires and we think that they're not important enough to pursue. And just think about what that means, though. Sometimes desires aren't meant to come to fruition, but anything that you desire in you, anything that kind of opens up in you, again, is the direction of where your energy is pointing. And so when we dismiss that, we're essentially dismissing ourselves, we're dismissing that energy. And then that energy has no place to go. And eventually, it kind of like a fire that doesn't have fuel on it, it eventually begins to smolder and go out. And so, one of the important things for us, even like I said, even if we're not able to act on something right now, it's important for us to think about, where are we dismissing our own desires? Are we dismissing them as being unimportant and silly because of other people in our lives? Other people have told us that things that we care about don't matter. Are we dismissing them because we always put other people before us? So really question that, if there are things that you're dismissing that you desire as being impractical, silly, or unimportant. Another question for you: where have I cut myself off from pleasure or from creativity, from beauty or connection? So like, where do you cut yourself off? Where do you cut your energy off, and why? So just things to explore as you continue through the Beltane season. So the next thing we're going to talk about is fertility as creative power. So kind of a different way of thinking about the fertility of Beltane season. But I'm just going to pause a moment to check out the chat. Debbie says that normally she plants seeds when it's cooler this year, so she may wait a little, and that's totally fine. There's nothing that says you have to plant anything right now. And more, a lot of what we are talking about too is just kind of internal planting and internal thinking and processing. Um, Debbie also said that they had a maypole dance, she said, before her high school graduation, which is always really cool. I've heard other people say that, they would have these maypole dances, and sometimes it would be before they actually became pagan or realized they were pagan. And then looking back on it, they're like, wow, we had this. This is a very pagan kind of activity, right? That makes its way into the more muggle or mundane world. Cersei said she is longing for friendship, for companionship, fun, happiness, and joy. And it's so important, right, to be able to articulate the things that you long for, that you yearn for, that you desire for, because it creates a driving force and a place to put your energy. And Mary meet to Tally Aislin, who is also joining us. All right, so let's look at the second theme, which is fertility as creative power. So like I said, fertility is a much broader and deeper idea. It's much deeper than just physical reproduction. So let's think about different ways that fertility could show up in your life, or different ways that you could make your life more fertile. So one idea is, so these are just some themes or some ideas, and just see if any of these resonate with you. A creative project that is beginning to take shape. So maybe there's something that you want to make or do or create. And then here at Beltane, the ideas are coming and it's beginning to take shape. And maybe you're even starting to see the steps forward and to start putting it into action. Maybe it's something related to a business idea that you have, a business idea that is finally beginning to gain momentum. And I can say for myself, it's looking like that energy is definitely happening for me. I feel like some areas of my business have become stagnant and kind of plateaued. And so I just had an opportunity come to me that I think is very positive, and it really feels like it's going to help my business grow more. And so what better time of the year for that than now, here at Beltane season? Other ways that fertility could show up in your life is a relationship that is being nourished, or focusing more on relationships and making sure that they are nourished, right? a spiritual practice that is becoming more consistent for you. Maybe you've been coming through a time of kind of some depression, which is very common as we come through the winter months when energy is lower. Maybe you feel you've fallen off your practice. Or maybe you're somebody who's always wanted to create a practice and just never have been able to really do it consistently. And so this could be the time to take that fertile energy and sort of bring it into really creating a spiritual practice that you can maintain through days to come, right? Fertility can be about a healing process that is finally starting to show some visible change. So maybe it is that you have been on a healing journey, like many people who follow this channel and Body Mind Witchcraft are, and maybe you're finally starting to see some changes, even if they're subtle. So ask yourself, what is it that wants to grow and what conditions will help it thrive? So remember, it's not just about noticing what's growing. It's also about what can we do to help it thrive. So just like the seeds that we plant at Ostara or at Beltane, we can't just put them in the earth and hope that everything works out. I mean, sometimes we can with some seeds, especially like native seeds and things like that don't need much work. But many types of plants and seeds, they need us to cultivate them. They need us to help them to flourish. So the same thing goes with your ideas, the things you desire, the fertility you want to see in your life. What do you want to grow? But also, what conditions is it going to take to help it thrive? So if there's anything, if you feel called to share in the chat about that, whether you're live or watching back in replay, let us know, what is being called to grow in your own life or, what is needed to help that thing thrive. So another theme is the theme of protection. I think this is one that a lot of people forget about with Beltane. A lot of times we think about, like, we do protection magic. You can do protection magic anytime, really. But we forget that this is a time of year that is particularly attuned to protection. So anything that is new, that's alive, that is vulnerable, or anything that is in the process of growing does need protection. I mean, think about little tiny animals, babies, little tiny seedlings and plants. Like, these things, they need gentleness, they need care, and they need protection. And so that goes for your ideas as well. The ideas that you are growing, that are percolating in you, that are just starting to grow, those things need protection too. So protection can mean a lot of different things. Protection can mean energetic protection. So maybe you need to learn how to protect your own energy, how to call it back to you, how to cut off other people's energy, maybe how to create boundaries, better boundaries around your own energy, around the things that you're willing or not willing to do, or around the people that you're willing or not willing to be around. Maybe protection is about keeping a project that you've just started private for a while. So sometimes in the beginning, when things are first growing, sometimes it can be better to keep them protected in closer to us before releasing them out into the world and sharing them with a lot of people. And you get to decide for yourself, when you have a new idea, you get to decide if it feels right to share it with others, or if it feels like it's something that needs some more tending within you before you share that with the world. It's got related to that, not sharing your dreams with people who will trample it or trample them. So if there are people in your life, they may be people that you dearly love, but they are not helpful, then it's better for you to often keep your dream to yourself, at least when it comes to those people. Because remember, energy builds on itself. I don't really think that let's say another person's negative energy will necessarily stop or hinder a project that you have in motion. But it can have effects on the way that you feel, and those effects can be unconscious. You may not realize it at first. When we hear people being very negative about something that we're excited about, part of us can be like, oh, we can brush that off. But sometimes we don't realize how it affects us unconsciously. So it's really important, I think, this is just my advice for you, is to just really think about the people in your life. Who are they? Who is safe? Who is not really safe when it comes to sharing your dreams and your big ideas with? Protection can also be about, like I said, protecting your energy. Earlier, I said that, or creating some kind of a structure around something that you need to nourish. So it could be something that you want to kind of grow or have flourish in your life, but it this time it feels like it doesn't really have structure. It doesn't really have a foundation or a framework or something that's going to make it actually become fruitful. And so you may need to create some structure around it or a foundation around it. This could be about you planning. Like you can have like ideas for how to grow a business or a project or, um, you know, cultivate friendships or things like that, but sometimes it requires some planning too. And so Beltane, this kind of protection energy, when you have that thing in sort of your protective space, you can look at it from all angles and all aspects. And you can kind of ask yourself, what needs to be done to protect this thing in order for it to grow. So share in the chat if that resonates with you. I do think that to me, when it comes to protection, I think that, like I said, protection magic can be done at any time of the wheel of the year, but it's especially good to do it at times when the energy is most aligned for that kind of intention, right? And now is one of those times. All right, so theme 4. So I don't get too distracted, I'm going to just keep moving. So theme 4 is about sacred union. And sometimes we think that the sacred union only has to do with like maybe the divine feminine and the divine masculine, or a god or a goddess coming together, and the Hieros Gamos, or the sacred marriage. For those of you who don't know, the sacred marriage or the Hieros Gamos is this idea that the god and the goddess, the mother and the great father, come together at this time. They procreate, they create this union together, and through their sexual union, they make the earth fertile, they make all of us fertile, and we all benefit because of it. And so there are some traditions, typically not modern ones, but there are some traditions that would have a priestess and a priest who would come together. They would have sexual union, and then and they would be representing the god and the goddess as they did it. Today, we tend to do something more symbolic. So the symbolic great rite is where you take a chalice or a cauldron or something that would represent the womb of the goddess or the divine feminine, and then you typically would take an athame, could be a stick or a wand or something that would represent the phallus of the male divine god, and then you would bring those together. So the athame is brought into the chalice, and then it represents essentially that same idea of the literal great rite where two individuals come together. So when we think of Beltane, we often think of that as like the sacred union. So when we hear someone say sacred union, we assume that's what they mean. But union does not have to be sexual, and it doesn't have to have anything to do with a masculine and feminine energy necessarily coming together, or god or a goddess. We simply do that as sympathetic magic. We might perform that symbolic great rite in a ritual. But there are other themes that could be underneath it, right? Or other intentions that could be underneath it. So kind of think about, like, I'm going to offer you a few options here, and think about if any of these resonate for you. So it could be the union of yourself and your spirit. It could be the union of your physical body with your spiritual body. It could be the union of your body with your intuition, if intuition is something you've been working on. It could be the union of your desire with your discipline, because desire without discipline often goes nowhere, right? But if we have discipline to actually put forth that an energy into that idea that we desire, we create something, right? This could be the union of creativity and action. So again, we can have all these creative thoughts, but in order to make them do something, we need to put action behind them. And then, of course, this could be the union of the inner masculine and the inner feminine energies within you. And I always like to remind people that this doesn't have anything to do with gender. These are just two different types of energies that are in the body, that are in the world. We happen to call them masculine and feminine, but these two energies come together, and we have them within us as well. And it could be us bringing those two energies together inside of us. So any of these ideas of union could be the union of the maypole if you are choosing to use a maypole or a mini maypole or something like that. It doesn't have to be that sexual union. So I just like to offer that because I think sometimes people like turn away from the idea of Beltane, or they feel like it doesn't really resonate with them if they're not, more focused on that sexual union. It doesn't have to be that. All right, so let us now kind of turn our sights on different ways that we could celebrate Beltane. And many of these are very simple ways that you can do at home. Some will require you gathering a few things, but most of these are very simple and could be done with things that you have just at your house. I'm just going to go back to the chat for just a moment, though. And Samantha was saying, when we asked the question about desire, she said, the desire to awaken the inner anima, the animating spirit within me. That is awesome. Taliesin said, I have my Beltane bottle from last year on my altar, and he said he loves this time of year. And so the Beltane bottle he is referring to is something that we made in our coven and our Shadow Seekers membership last year. And I believe that was a public ritual. I think there were people who are not in our groups who were also invited to that. But we made a mini maypole bottle kind of jar where you take a stick and we're going to talk about the maypole in just a bit, especially when we're talking about some ribbon magic. But usually what you do is you take a little stick, you get some different colored ribbons, and you tie it to the top of the stick, and then you put it in the jar, and then you can fill the jar with other things. Like in the past, I've filled it with like soil to kind of represent the earth element. You can fill it with flowers, dried flowers, herbs, stones. You can put stickers on the outside. It's just a really fun activity for kids, also for adults. So kind of think about doing that. We had a lot of fun making it. Jenny said, I plant my herbs before Beltane, and she says, I make the mini maples for my herb garden, which is awesome because you can make them for your garden too, or for like any places where you know there are fairies or fairy doors. Jenny said the veggies will get planted a little later in the month. Taliesin said the lemon balm from Ostara ritual is growing well. Oh yeah, so at Ostara we planted seeds, and then people were kind of tending them, and he said his is growing very well. That's awesome. Lisa said that when she was a kid, she said we used to make May baskets and take them to the nursing homes, and now they don't even mention it in school. And that is kind of interesting, right? So, like, for many of us, because I've heard of many people say, yeah, I remember them doing a maypole. Like, I think, like, was it Beth who told me this? Like, her mom was saying, oh, they used to, like, do maypoles. We come from Indiana. We grew up in Indiana, and it's just like, you're not going to see anybody doing maples in Indiana, in many places in Indiana anymore. But her mom remembers when they would do like a maypole. But it's sad that some of this has been removed. It's not even mentioned anymore. I think like a lot of it has to do, like, these are pagan activities and ideas, and there's this move, at least in the U.S., to kind of Christianize things and sort of remove those pagan ideas from schools. And it's sad too because it's so fun. Those were such fun activities for kids to do. Um, Debbie said she's definitely feeling less anxious recently and more in tune with her intuition. Is very good, very good. Jenny said she is growing her own self-worth. Felicia said she wants to grow a stable home routine. So these are all like having those, those desires, having those goals. Always good to state them here at Beltane. Debbie said, can you explain self and spirit? Yeah, so I think, when we're talking about self and spirit, self is often like that personal self. So, like, who am I? In a lot of ways, we would probably say that's like my ego. It's probably my conscious and even some of my unconscious. But spirit is that thing that exists outside of us, it is us. We might say our soul, for example. It's the part of us that doesn't die. It's the part that's going to continue on from incarnation to incarnation. Sometimes we will get very connected to ourselves in this lifetime, and that can make it hard for us to open up and expand ourselves because we're so connected to who we are right now. But a lot of like what we are is not, I guess it's really trying to figure out who we truly are at the spiritual level and kind of bringing that together with who we identify as with in this life. um, okay, I'll go back to the chat in just a moment, but keep the comments coming. I'm going to move on. Let's talk about a few ideas for Beltane. And the first one is I think it's to make the mini maypole, which I already talked about. Okay, let's start with lighting candles or fire. So as we talked about, this is a fire festival. So Beltane, like many of the sabbats, to me is kind of incomplete without the candles and the fire, because it is a fire festival, right? So light as many candles as you can. See if you can find a way to have a safe fire. If you have a place where you can have a fire pit or a bonfire, that would be great. You can throw sacred herbs into it. There's oftentimes like there's the 7 sacred woods that are often thrown into the Beltane fire that can be hard to find the 7 sacred woods. If you haven't heard about them off the top of my head, I don't know all of what they are. I know that I know that several of them are difficult to acquire. And so they're ones that can be swapped in. But you don't have to throw 7 sacred woods into the fire. You can throw any of your herbs in, any of your intentions in. But fire is always a great way to celebrate Beltane. You can also create a Beltane altar. So we mentioned earlier some of the symbols of Beltane, different flowers, candles, ribbons, colors like green, and some of the pastels of Ostara, spring equinox, also are part of Beltane. But I really think of Beltane as being kind of like green and white. I might even say red because it's a color of fertility. Um, you can also include, like we said, greenery, honey, fruit, symbols of the things that you want to grow. Those could also be placed on your altar. You can make a flower crown or wreath or any kind of a small floral offering. So if you never made a flower crown, it's really fun. I'm not terribly crafty, and I've been able to make one. But you can also you can make real ones with real flowers by kind of connecting them and making them into a ring. But you can also go to like a place like Michael's and you can get wreaths, which you could then tie flowers onto if that is easier for you to make it that way. I also think that making like a flower wreath where like, so let's say you get a small one that you could actually wear as a crown, but you can also get a larger one or a smaller one that you want to hang somewhere. You can get those kind of pre-made wreaths at Michael's. And there are ones that are like the green ones, like Christmas wreaths, but you can also get the ones that are made kind of wood or branches or sticks. So those are the ones I'm kind of thinking of, and then tie the flowers into them. But another thing you can do is you can get one of those, and then you can take ribbons and you can make a pentacle in the middle of the wreath, and then just connect the ribbons to it as you make that shape of the star. And that can also be a really fun activity for Beltane. You can also, like we said, you can make floral offerings. I'll talk more next episode when we talk about like the fairy folk, but you can always make offerings to the fairy folk, to nature spirits. Offerings of flowers are always good at this time of year. You can work with ribbons. So this is one of my favorite kinds of magic. I don't do it as much as I used to when I was younger, and I'd love to actually probably get back into it more. But I love ribbon magic. So you can choose ribbons of different colors that align to your intentions. So if your intentions like creativity or protection, passion, courage, joy, kind of think about what your intention is, what colors might resonate with that intention. I always think your intuition is the best choice when coming to choosing colors. But you can also look up color correspondence charts and you can see, for example, like protection. Some people might say brown or black. Other people might say white or a different color. So to me, it's always like go with your intuition when it comes to colors. But essentially what you do is you get ribbons of different colors that connect to your intentions. And then you can do many different things. You can make the Beltane wreath with the ribbons if you would like. You can make the little mini maypole jars if you would like and connect the ribbons to the stick and then put it in your jar. Or you can do ribbon magic. We're going to talk, there's a spell we're going to talk about a little bit later, which where you'll tie knots into a ribbon. But what I really like to do is I take 3 ribbons, I find an intention. It might be 3 intentions or 1 intention. And then I just braid those ribbons together. And as I'm braiding, during that time that I'm braiding those ribbons, I focus deeply on my intention. I might even have a little like affirmation that I'm saying or a little mantra that I'm saying as I am braiding those ribbons. I'm braiding my intention into it. And then after that, you can do many things. You can hang that ribbon somewhere. You could put it somewhere safe. You could carry it with you. I used to tie them into little bracelets or necklaces and wear them. And then I would be like, well, when it falls off, then it means kind of it's done. The magic has worked its way through. But definitely one of my favorite ways to do magic, and so easy because it just takes some ribbons. And you can get those very affordably at a place like Michael's or something like that. We talked about protection magic at Beltane, so you can bless your home or your threshold. So this is a good time to do doorway blessings, just kind of bless what comes across the doorway. You can leave like, you can draw like kind of a salt boundary on the outside of your door. Be careful about that if you have pets. You may not do it, maybe you don't necessarily want to do it on the inside of the door. But you can there's other ways that you can kind of tap into this protection energy. So you could like hang bells attached to ribbons from your door or the door handle or knob. You could use sage. You could burn sage and kind of go around your space and cleanse it that way. There are also smoke-free sprays that you can use, like kind of herbal sprays that can also bless and protect, or even just simple water. You could just take a bowl of water and just kind of disperse it around your space as well. But just a really good time for doing some protection magic or blessing the home and the threshold. Spending time with the land is always, to me, it's important at all sabbats, but especially during the ones on kind of the light half of the wheel. Go outside, visit a garden, tend to your plants, sit, even if you don't have plants or a garden of your own, go to a place where there are plants and just sit near a plant and just breathe and just listen and just kind of take in everything that is around you. Just simply noticing what kinds of things are blooming around the space where you live. You can also prepare seasonal food and drink. Honey is always very makes a lot of sense to use as an offering at Beltane. It's also very much connected to Litha as well. Honey, berries, bread, dairy, herbal tea, anything kind of floral syrups, fresh fruit. Any of these can be used to cook anything you want. If you are not somebody who cooks, like I don't really cook very well or very often, but you can, whoever is the cook at your house, you can offer some of these suggestions to them as well to kind of cook, you know, with Beltane season in mind. But you can also buy foods, buy fruits, different things like that. There's even like the edible flowers. Those would be a really nice touch for like a salad or something like that. You can also do creativity magic. So this is a good time for reading poetry during your rituals or writing poetry, painting, dancing, singing. You don't have to be you don't have to be like traditionally talented in order to do any of these things. Really like unleash your inner child. I do think that this is a good time of the year for the inner child to come out and play. So kind of think of the things like when you were a kid. What kind of artistic creativity did you have? What was your favorite artistic way to express yourself? And see if you can bring some of that into your energy and your space right now as well. So I think the thing is it's never to feel overwhelmed. So a couple of things to mention when it comes to all of these ideas is like, it's a long list. It's not meant to overwhelm people. You don't have to do every single thing on the list. It really depends on where you are with your energy. And then also another thing to keep in mind is that Beltane is not one single day. It is an entire season, which is 5 to 6 weeks. So you have plenty of time. In fact, I would suggest a person not do all of this on one day and then just move on from Beltane. I would recommend, if you are going to celebrate on May 1st, or maybe astrological Beltane on the 4th or something like that, do something then, but then see if there are ways that you can bring more of these practices into your day-to-day life as you move through Beltane season. You'll help to keep the magic of Beltane alive. Now, when it comes to a practice, especially as maybe what you're planning for the actual Beltane celebration, ask yourself what is realistic and how much time you have. So if you only have 5 minutes, then that's okay. Just light a candle, and maybe say one thing that you would like to bless in your life, or one thing you would like to protect, or one thing that you're longing for, and just have that be your intention. If you have more like 20 minutes, you can go a little deeper, and maybe you could create a small altar now and use some of those ideas I mentioned earlier with the colors and the symbols. You might journal on some of the prompts that I gave earlier. I'm going to give a few more at the end. You might do a ribbon spell. So there's going to be a ribbon spell I'm going to talk about a little bit later, or you can do the one I mentioned where you just take your intentions and put them into the ribbons as you braid. So that would be nice if you had 20 minutes. Now, if you have more time and you want to do a fuller ritual, then you could, cleanse and consecrate the space. You could cast your circle. You might call in the quarters and some deities if you want. You could light candles. You could do like a full ribbon spell. You could do a flower blessing. You could make an offering, and then you could kind of end the ritual. But never feel that you have to do a full ritual if you don't have the energy, the space, the time for that. There are absolutely smaller ways to celebrate Beltane. And to me, it's like, it doesn't matter how big it is. What matters is that you do something. So if you keep yourself from doing something because it can't be like a big thing, or you don't have the energy or the time for it, and then you just keep yourself from doing it, you're really missing out. Just light a candle, set an intention, say something out loud, and just make a conscious effort to celebrate Beltane. I'll go a lot further than worrying about and not being able to do something larger. Okay, so I'm going to move now into the spell. So kind of in the interest of time, I'm just going to tell you about this spell, and then we'll go back to the chat and do the Q&A. So I really like this spell. I'm going to offer some kind of alternative ideas and thoughts as we go. So it's very easy. What you will do is you will collect some ribbons. So there's two kind of forms of this. So in one form, you collect one ribbon that you're going to knot. In the other form, you would have three that you're going to braid together. So maybe you're choosing colors that are aligned to kind of the Beltane season, like white or green or gold or pink or red or something like that. But again, the color can be aligned to whatever your intention is as well. So you've got one or more ribbons, and then I would get one or more candles. One is all you really need, but if you want more candles, it is a fire holiday, so grab as many candles as you want. And again, those can be red, white, pink, green, gold, the colors of Beltane, or they can be any color. The color of your intention will also be fine. So you've got a candle, you've got a ribbon or three ribbons, you have a small piece of paper so you can write something on it, a pen so you can write with it. And then again, optionally, you can have anything around your space to kind of create your sacred space. You can have some flowers, herbs, a bowl of water, stones, anything that you want to help create that space. Okay, so what you're going to do is when you're ready, you're going to light your candle. Prior to lighting your candle, if you want to dress it, you can dress it with oil by rubbing oil into the candle. You can then roll it in herbs if you want to dress it in herbs after dressing it with the oil. You could have carved a sigil into it before you began. So these are all optional add-ons, but you can also just light the candle. Name what you are calling into fuller bloom. Name that desire, that thing that you long for, that you desire, that you want to see come to fruition. You want to put your energy toward this Beltane season. Say that out loud. Name what it is. And then you're going to write it on the piece of paper. So after that, I would choose a ribbon. If you're only doing one ribbon, choose a ribbon that you feel represents that that intention, that thing that you're calling into bloom, that you're calling, that you're desiring at this time. And you are, so I'm going to kind of talk through the knotted version of this, and then I will talk through what you would do if you're going to braid. So if you're going to do the knotted version, you would tie one knot into that ribbon, and then you would name that desire out loud. I would recommend say it out loud so that you are using your throat chakra, which is also it's your chakra of creativity. Then you're going to go ahead and tie a second knot below that first knot. And here you are going to name an action that you will take. So you name your desire first with the first knot, and then you name the action you will take with the second knot. And just think about what would be the next step. It doesn't have to be this step to get the thing that you desire, but just what is the next step that you could take. And then you're going to tie a third knot. And with that third knot, you're going to name how you're going to protect that intention or how you're going to tend to it. So if you feel like it needs to be protected, maybe what you would say is something about creating better boundaries or something like that. Or if it comes to like tending it, it would just be like, what will you do to continue to feed life into that desire? So 3 knots, right? One for the intention, one for, the simple action you will take next. And then the third knot is how will you protect your intention or how will you tend to it? And then when you're done with that, you can place that ribbon on your altar. Like I mentioned before with the ribbons, you can hang it somewhere, hang it near a doorway, carry it. You can even tie it onto you, carry it in your purse or your wallet. Now, alternatively, what you could do is you could have the 3 ribbons that you're braiding. One ribbon is your desire, one ribbon is the action you will take, represents the action you will take, and then the third ribbon represents you protecting that action, protecting that desire, or tending to it. And then you can just kind of, as you're braiding this together, just send those intentions into the ribbon. And then again, at the end, you can wear it, you can hang it, you can carry it with you, or place it on your altar. And then if you would like, you can say some kind of a little incantation. I bless what is ready to grow. I honor the desire that points me toward life. I commit to tending this with action, protection, and care. So I'll just mention that one more time. So I bless what is ready to grow. I honor the desire that points me toward life. And I commit to tending this with action, protection, and care. And you don't have to say those exact words. You can make up any kind of little incantation that you would like. Okay, and I will tell you that when I send out the weekly email, which will have this replay of this episode in it, I will write this spell out for you. So if you really want it, just make sure you're on my mailing list. In a moment, I'll drop that link into the chat in case you're not. But if you are on my mailing list, just look for that coming soon. In the next day or two, you get the replay and you'll have this whole spell written out for you as well. All right, so let's just move finally into just a couple of kind of reflection or shadow work prompts that you could use. Some of these are kind of what we've mentioned earlier. What feels alive in me right now? What desire have I been ignoring, minimizing, or judging? So that goes back to like that idea of like, what do I want that I kind of downplay because I don't think it's practical? What desire have I been ignoring, minimizing, or judging? What am I ready to bring into fuller expression in my life? What needs protection while it grows? And what am I willing to tend through the coming season? So you can kind of reflect on any or all of those. Those will also be written out in the email that comes with this episode as well. So just kind of in closing, before we go to the Q&A, remember that Beltane is a seasonal energy. Things are not meant to all be done here at once. Also, Beltane, I believe, is a reminder to us to remember what is alive in you and what deserves attention. So really be thinking about that as you move forward into Beltane season. What is alive in you and what needs attention? Because really what I think at the end of all of this is what we desire and what we are creating, what we are growing, and what we are protecting all matter. And that is really what Beltane season is all about. It invites us to kind of bless that spark within us, tend what is already there, tend the flame of what is growing, and honor what is ready to bloom. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode. And again, like I would love to hear in the chat, let me know what resonates with you. How are you celebrating Beltane? And if you have any questions about anything related to Beltane or witchcraft, shadow work, or energy work, share it in the chat. I'm going to go to the Q&A now. If you're watching back on replay, you can also share a question in the chat. And anything I don't answer during the live, I will always go back and answer later. Okay, so I do have one question that Debbie left for me, so I'm going to answer that now, though I feel like in some ways I probably already answered that through this episode because her question was very much aligned to this episode. So she said, how can I protect my energy from negativity? So I think that, it kind of depends on what the negativity is, that where it's coming from, that you're trying to protect yourself from. I think that regardless of where it's coming from, a very simple practice is to really notice your energy at certain times during the day. Make an effort to check in with yourself and ask yourself, whose energy am I carrying right now? Is it mine? Is it somebody else's? Is it a combination? Before you go to bed at night, or when you come home from a day, or once you're kind of done and you're going to just be in your own energy now, just imagine taking, like I close my eyes, imagine taking some kind of like, I take an athame, I imagine it's like a selenite athame, and I imagine myself just kind of cutting all the cords that are attached to me. And this doesn't have to be a negative thing. It's not like we're doing this because we're mad at somebody or we're not trying to cut off a person. We're just like, you don't need to go to bed with somebody else's energy. You need to go to bed with your own energy. This is a nice practice that allows you to just kind of distance yourself from other people's energy in that moment so that you can have peace while you sleep. So I highly recommend that people do that. Anybody who's like empathic or very sensitive to other people's energy, or if you are somebody who's a caregiver and you're constantly picking up other people's energy, or a spiritual provider, or or not even necessarily a spiritual provider, but anybody who's providing care to somebody else, it would really behoove them to do a practice like this at the end of the night. It's very simple, but you'd be shocked at how effective it can be. The other thing is if you feel like your energy is being left with other people, the idea with the athame of cutting the energy off is very effective for like when you're just cutting off other people's energy that you're carrying that's attached to you. But let's say you think that your energy is left with somebody else. I like to imagine like it was like a fishing reel and you're like just pulling all the kind of lines back into you that belong to you, and just imagine just winding them all back up into your body. So I think that can be, those two practices alone can be very, very effective at helping you to, protect your own energy. But one of the things I'm also going to do is I'm going to drop in the chat. There were 2 previous episodes that you might find very helpful. The first one this was like a back-to-back set of episodes I did a while back. So the first one is more about like magical protection and warding. So it's like if you want like more kind of physical protection, that is a really good episode to check out. There is also a second episode which is about energetic protection. And I'm just trying to find it here. In fact, it was called Psychic Self-Defense. So this episode is more about like your own energy. So I think this one would probably benefit somebody who has a question like Debbie's, where she asked like, how can I protect my energy from kind of like negativity? That episode could also be really helpful. If you're watching back on YouTube, those 2 videos will also be, the links for them will also be down in the comments. So I hope that helps, but I would just put those practices into place right away, kind of pulling your own energy back at the end of the day and also cutting off other people's energy. At least you can go to bed with your own energy and it will work wonders for you. And then past that, I would go and check out one of those 2 episodes there. And I'm not sure if it, I think those are the right episodes. Okay. I'll look at those later, make sure they're the right ones. So if anybody has any other questions, put them in the chat. And I'm just going to go back and see what I have missed. Samantha said her goal to awaken the green earth of spring and summer. Hello, green earth. She said, come wrap me in your lovely set juicy tendrils and set me afire with life and love and joy. Yeah, and writing like beautiful little like incantations like that can just be such a special way of tapping into the energy of the season. Jenny said she's going to make a Damiana cordial and then building an outdoor altar and divination. Damiana is a very good herb for Beltane especially. And it is a natural aphrodisiac for those who don't know much about Damiana. Felicia said she still has her maple in her jar on her altar. I do too, as well. Okay, so Taliesin said, "Woohoo! Time to pull baby out." Baby is his big cauldron. Very good time for that, right at Beltane. And Taliesin also said, oh, he said of the seven sacred woods: oak, birch, rowan, apple, willow, hazel, and holly. So if anybody does want to try to do the seven woods in your cauldron or the bonfire for Beltane, you can try some of those or all of those woods. And Samantha said, never burn the elder wood. Isn't that one of the ancient reed? I do believe that is in the witch's reed, is to not burn the elder wood. I do believe that is one of the lines from that poem. Yes. Um, okay. Telly says that he's getting hungry with all the honey and berry talk. All right, so I am going to, if I missed anybody's questions, I promise I will go back. Sometimes it's hard. I miss some things as we're going through the episode, but I do want to just kind of leave you with a few things that are coming up. So coming up this Sunday, May 3rd at 4:30 p.m. Pacific, we are going to be having our public Beltane ritual. So this ritual is our Hecate ritual, Keys to the Hidden Realms. So we did not do this ritual last year, but we did it the year before. It's a very popular ritual. If you are in our Shadow Seekers membership or Coven of Midnight's Flame, your ticket is just part of being in one of those two groups. But if you're not in one of those two groups and would like to join us, you can get your ticket by donation of any amount. I'm going to go ahead and drop a link in the chat. For those watching on YouTube, this will just be in the comments below as well. You can donate any amount and it will give you your virtual ticket. You can join us for the ritual live, and you will also receive a recording in case you missed the live ritual or you want to go back and rewatch any part of it. This ritual centers around a very deep journeying meditation where you will walk with Hecate to a sacred grove, and we will search for the entrances to 5 different places, which will allow you to commune with a version of yourself in the past, a version of yourself in the future, a version of yourself in an alternate world, which is also, that's a very interesting and neat part of the meditation. Also, you'll be able to commune with the ancestors. And I forget what the 5th one is. Can't remember, but there's a 5th doorway you also go through. And it's a very interesting meditation. People come out of it with a lot of insight into different areas of their life where they can grow, or where they can like release things. Because the veils are so thin at Beltane, this is the perfect time for you to journey like this. And so we will like to spend some time really helping to create the space to get you into the best mindset we can get you into and the best energy we can get you into for the journey, and then we'll go on it together. So if you are interested in working with Hecate, if you are interested in doing that kind of journeying meditation, if you're just interested in celebrating Beltane in general, we would love for you to join us for that ritual. So go ahead and check out, I feel like let me just see if this actually, I feel like I might have just shared the wrong thing, so I'm just going to put another thing in there. I think that's the right thing. Anyway, check that out. You can check it on the link below. You can read more about what the ritual is about. And then if you're not part of one of our groups, go ahead and just pay a small amount for your donation, and then you'll be able to join us for the ritual. Then coming up on 5/5, we're going to be doing an episode on working with the Fae folk. So if you've been wondering about how to work with them, or just if you want to just learn about them and why they're so prevalent at this time of the year, that's going to be a great episode coming up next week. All right, so leave a heart or a thumbs up somewhere in the episode. It helps us get this out to the feed of more people. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Body, Mind, Witchcraft. If you have not already subscribed to it, if you do that, you will help us grow the channel, but you'll also make sure that you never miss a single episode, because these episodes get loaded up onto those later, and then all the subscribers are notified when they do. The other thing is, if you are not a member of my mailing list and would like to be, I'm going to drop a link here in the chat. Those on YouTube, this will just be in the description of the video. And you can sign up for the mailing list. You'll get our weekly email that has a replay, plus it has spells and correspondence sheets and various different goodies every week. And you'll also will be informed when there are special events like rituals or workshops or different things like that. And I will leave you for now. Happy Beltane. Also, Friday is not only is Friday traditional, the day that Beltane is traditionally celebrated, it is also a full moon. So the energy is perfectly aligned for you to help bring your desires into reality this Beltane. As always, it's always wonderful to spend Tuesday evening with those of you who are alive. And until next time, blessed be.